Guild Wars 2 has remained in the top 10 most played MMOs for years and years, with an extremely unique gameplay style with its PvE, PvP, and its special world versus world content. Guild Wars 2 has attracted a certain kind of player base and seems to do it quite well. Even though Guild Wars 2 is probably one of the most consistently good MMOs, here's 10 things that I think would make Guild Wars 2 a much better game. Number 1, dungeons. For those of you who don't play Guild Wars 2, let me explain to you. At level 30, you unlock your first story mode dungeon. At level 35, you basically go into the same dungeon, but there are 3 different paths that you can take, which give you different stories and different lore aspects, which are quite fun to do. However, dungeons in Guild Wars 2 was abandoned content. Instead, they went for what they call fractals, which is what Mythic Plus in WoW is basically based on. Instabilities that change day to day, week to week, which make your 5-man content ever fresh and renewing. However, fractals only unlock at level 80, which means only at level 80 can you take part in the current 5-man structured gameplay. Meaning that your first introduction to structured content in Guild Wars 2 is pretty much a dead version of the game. You could be looking for a group for days, trying to do content that you want to, and because of the change to runes and relics, no one really runs as much dungeons, because before, at least, the level 30 dungeon dropped the best rune for healing supports in the game. But now that they've separated runes and relics apart from each other, you don't necessarily need to do this, meaning that there are even going to be fewer groups doing dungeons because it's not really as good as it even was previously. Now, some may suggest, why don't they just delete dungeons or also make them only unlocked at level 80 or things like this? I don't think that's the right way to go, because dungeons are quite good for lore and they're a really fun part of the game to play. They're just not as flourishing as fractals and other content. My advice would be to maybe make some sort of an entry level fractal, maybe that starts at level 20 or 25, that players can get introduced to. This means that they can get rewards and get used to fractals and that sort of content before they even get to endgame, so that when they get to endgame, they're well familiar with it and they can do it all the same to get really good rewards, and keep dungeons as they are, because they are still fun. Even though they are a bit of an abandoned, dead form of the game, they're still pretty fun to do. Number 2, user interface options. I don't like to compare Guild Wars 2 to other games. Every single MMO is special in its own way. Whether you're playing World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, ESO, they've all got their pros and cons. Guild Wars 2 is extremely the same. The only thing that kind of separates Guild Wars 2 to a lot of other current big MMOs is the lack of UI adjustment and add-ons that you can use to adjust the game to make it look and play the way you want to. I think that giving more access to more UI options will be a big benefit to the game in general. Allowing the players to track and change things as they want to will basically allow Guild Wars 2 players to feel like they've got their own customization rather than the stock standard. There are a few add-ons and things that you can put into the game, like your Arc DPS, your Taco, things like this, but a lot of these are quite hard to put on. It would be better if the game had more adjustable settings like they do in World of Warcraft currently, with an edit UI button that just allows you to change even some of the basic things. Number 3, better story set pieces. I will try get not into spoilers when talking about this, but even in the current expansion, the last little bits of the story actually had fairly good story set pieces. They gave you a lot of depth and context of the story. But basically what I'm getting at is a lot of, especially the current expansion, is a lot of tell, don't show. And that is a bad form of storytelling. You can't just tell us, oh, we're losing the battle. If you think back to Season 4 with some of these set pieces with Joko and Kralkatorrik, you felt the impact of everything. You felt the dread, the terror, and you had to react quick enough to try and prevent this, and that's what you felt as the commander. Even if you think back to some of the story of Pothify itself, even if you weren't there for some of the battles, you saw the after effect on the landscape, the people, everything, and it gave you the magnitude of the story unfolding. If you just tell people this is what's happening but you don't show it, it's not good enough. They've got such a good engine and such capabilities that they needed to really drag out and give you the magnitude. One of the examples I'll give you, which hopefully doesn't spoil the story, is at one point you and General team up and he says they've got numbers on their side, and you basically, and he tells you your other friends are fighting on these fronts. Now, first of all, you don't see that. You're literally just walking down a road and one after one mob is coming at you and you just kill it and then the next one comes. You don't get any context. He's a general of the army. There should be soldiers around you. You should be seeing a lot of fighting, and it should feel like the last ditch attempt effort. I was almost shocked to find out that the story almost ended very soon after that, because I didn't actually get this feeling of a massive battle. It was just a big letdown in that form of storytelling. Now, obviously, the developers have came out and said that they aren't happy with how the story unfolded. They thought it was too many threads to try and piece together in a mini expansion, and they're going to address it. And I think that's a good thing. I think they need to refocus and try and give us more context, set pieces. Even in-game cutscenes would be brilliant just to give context and story so that people feel invested in the story. I honestly can barely remember any of the story, and I played through it last night. Number 4, craftable cosmetic and armor styles. Now, this is a bit of a hard one to explain, but I would like to try. In Guild Wars 2, when you get an armor drop or you craft a set of armor, it has a certain style to it. Now, in order to change that, you need to use either an item that you can get out in open world, world versus world, or you can buy it out of the shop. Now, what this does is it obviously creates a resource that you need to try and manage in terms of your cosmetics. Now, it's not really that big of a deal because most of the people will just wait till end game and then adjust their cosmetics. But I feel like when leveling up in an MMO, there's nothing worse than looking like you're in a potato sack. I would like to see in Guild Wars 2 them change that when you craft armor, you can maybe put a resource in and it creates a certain aesthetic so you can keep your armor looking the same. This is very similar to Elder Scrolls Online, which has that for each race. You add a gem that basically creates the armor in that race's style. And I think this is really something good. And I would like to see more variety in armor styles while leveling up. One thing also to add to this that I would love to have seen in Guild Wars 2, and I think it would be an absolute slam dunk if they could do it, is like with their Black Lion chests and their stores that have a random beautiful cosmetic that goes on a weapon that you have the chance to get. A lot of people will grind themselves Black Lion keys and things like that. You have the chance to open the chest and get one of these cosmetic skins. And they're incredibly beautiful, and I would love to see them do that with crafting on a weekly basis or monthly basis. What I mean by this is if they created a way to dump a whole bunch of resources and you basically craft a chest or something, and when you open it you can get a random armor drop. You limit it maybe to one a week or one a month or something like this, but this just creates a bit of a rarity in certain armor cosmetics that you can maybe sell on the store or keep for yourself. And this will create an incentive for people to craft more. And I think that crafting in Guild Wars 2 is actually really good compared to a lot of MMOs. Being able to craft endgame and legendary gear without needing some drop from raids or some other game mode is very rare in MMOs nowadays. And I would love to see them carry on with that and take it into some sort of cosmetic system where we can craft a chance for cosmetics. And this would create also a lot more demand for materials, which would make gathering and getting materials more expensive. This means that you're stimulating the economy and people are just going to be playing the game more because they're going to have this chance for beautiful cosmetics. Now, if you thought that was controversial, wait for the next point. Number 5, easy mode builds. What I mean by this is, let me explain before you downvote. I think that every single profession in Guild Wars 2, Guardian, Revenant, blah, 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 should have access to one easy mode build per profession at least. What I mean by this is a build that can basically do 30 to 35k DPS on bench and with very minimal effort. Kind of almost like the Power Lack mech. Now, a lot of people found it toxic because you would basically just get a whole bunch of people playing that. But I think that's good for a lot of newer players, just to have a build that's very easy and simple. Yes, you still give the tryhards the 40-45k build, so they'll still be hitting a lot harder. But give the people that are learning raids or fractals a build that is just easy, can do a ton of DPS so they can learn mechanics. And then once they get used to the mechanics, they can upgrade to a more advanced build with more DPS. I'd like to see that more often in builds because a lot of players just aren't that good. And it's fine to not be good. An MMO is supposed to be fun and you're supposed to be able to play it in multiple different ways. But just giving people a bit of more of an easy mode build per class, it just allows them to kind of have fun with better players, be able to do meta events and not be doing like 4k DPS, but rather doing a little bit more and just having fun. Point number 6, guild participation and rewards. Yes, a game called Guild Wars has very little in the way of guild activities. There are guild missions that you can do, PvP, world versus world, even a few other things that you can do as guild, but the rewards aren't really that great. I would almost like to borrow a little bit from a game that people probably don't want me to borrow from, but go for Black Desert Online's guild reward system. Basically what happens is your guild competes and does certain things, gains nodes, does certain missions, everything, and your guild gets a massive payout which can get distributed however to the guild itself. I would like to see that in Guild Wars 2. More guild activities, creating more incentive to converse and play with other players. If you don't do it, it's not like you're losing out much. But if you do it, you're just gaining extra rewards. I would like to see that more in the game, just to kind of give players an incentive to get to know their guilds and play more with their guilds. Number 7, rewards for doing older content. Now let me explain what I'm thinking here. As Guild Wars 2 gets bigger and bigger, the amount of player base doing older content will disperse. The amount of people on Season 3 maps and Season 4 maps, Path of Fire, Heart of Thorns maps, is just depleting, meaning that people that want to do certain achievements, to unlock legendary items, to get certain mount things, or just going achievement point hunting, can't find people to do the content with. Now this is the big problem, and it's only something that's going to get worse as they bring out new expansions. This is good for us because we get fresh content, but also some of the older maps have some brilliant content to do. What I would recommend and think about is something like a weekly reward chest that rewards you for doing older content. This is also an incentive for players to buy older content, maybe ones that don't have Season 3 or Season 4, to get those expansion packs. Not only do they have really awesome stories and rewards of their own, but if there were something like a weekly reward chest, where if you did a certain amount of achievements or meta events or something linked to achievements that perhaps the developers want more people to do, you get rewarded basically on a chest at the end of the week. And what you do is you add some random chance for very high tier drops in that chest. Now some of you might say, but there is something like that. There are daily Season 3 or daily Season 4 and Ice Brew Saga maps. This means that people will be doing those maps anyway, but yeah, I would say if the weekly chest was something a little bit more extreme, gave you quite a lot of reward because it's a weekly based event, maybe with 20 or 30 deeds or something like this that need to be done in the week, so it's quite a hefty amount, and therefore also has a very high tier drop in there. This would incentivize players to really try and do that every week, but if you don't complete it in the week, it carries on to next week. So say you end the week at 10 out of 20 or whatever, next week you start off at 10 out of 20 and you just need to finish it. This allows players that play the game a lot to obviously be able to complete it weekly, but then players that don't have all of the Living Worlds things, maybe like they don't have Season 3, they can't do all of them in the week, so they'll just carry on and finish it next week. And this allows players to basically do a lot of the older content as well and incentivizes that. Because basically, if you don't, you're going to end up with something like a Delph, which I doubt most people are doing. Maybe there are groups doing it regularly, I don't know. But I don't think a lot of groups are going to go back there because, you know, once you've got a lot of the rewards and whatever, it's not really worth running over and over again because it doesn't seem like the most fun meta. Now, there are going to be players that are going to want to obviously get those awesome armor sets from it, and they're going to be struggling to try and find groups. Something like this weekly chest can incentivize players to do metas that they normally wouldn't do. And number 8, experimental and seasonal content. Now yes, I don't want them to jump on the World of Warcraft bandwagon of, you know, Plunderstorm or Season of Discovery or Remix or anything like this, but I think that having content that's unique, special, like a seasonal or experimental event, will allow players to play the game from a fresh perspective. Whether you do something silly, like you change every single NPC in the world to Choyas and you have a special, you know, month-long event where if you get to endgame, you get a couple of cosmetic rewards, you get to keep a character slot, maybe the character that you created for the seasonal event. Something like that would be really fun, and I think it would engage the player base in special ways. You create different events, different randomness, and I think that people would be so willing to try this content out. And I think that it could be a huge plus for Guild Wars 2 and ArenaNet if they could create a lot more incentive for people to come back playing the game. Because for some players, Guild Wars 2 can feel a bit repetitive. Once you know the content, it doesn't change that much. So being able to play from a fresh way or with different abilities, you know, mixing up different things, maybe giving different players different weapons from other builds and things like that, just to mix it up and create some fun. And number 9, I know I'm going to get some flack for this, but better ERP and social content. I think that Guild Wars 2 has got one of the better looking engines out of MMOs at the moment, and I think they could compete with Final Fantasy on the social aspect scene. I think if they really put effort into their emote system and into their cosmetic systems, they can create a lot of that scene, and that attracts a lot of players. Oh, whoa, oh, they're bringing up bikinis, and oh my gosh, look at that bulge, jeepers. Okay, wait, well, oh, okay, I take some of that back. That's awesome. And wow, that was from my last video when I was basically going through reasons why people leave Guild Wars 2. And wow, that's something I did not expect. Jeepers, that is pretty freaking cool. I definitely think content like that is going to attract certain players. But all jokes aside, an MMO needs to either hit different aesthetics. Either you need to go super traditional like your ESO, where it's basically just medieval armor and whatever, or you've got to go for a combination of medieval armor and butterfly wings and shiny things. And pretty much Guild Wars 2 falls into that. We're butterfly wings and shiny things and medieval armor. So creating an aesthetic where certain players can basically have a pink afro with glasses on, and certain players can be pretty much a massive Dragon Knight badass looking character. Guild Wars 2 needs to hit all of that and try and almost expand their cosmetic section. I think that if Guild Wars 2 can expand it in a way, I think that would be very good for the player base. Good for players trying to unlock new things, good for players getting into it, and good for the ERP scene. Not that I'm personally interested in it, but I think that it's a really good scene. And also, because you can swap in-game gold for gems, you can just basically convert over if you're grinding, buy whatever cosmetics you want, and then just carry on playing. And number 10 goes hand in hand with number 9, player housing or guild customizable housing. Oh wait, oh gosh. Oh, they've announced it. Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, this video was supposed to be 10 things. I'm not going to take this away though. Well, let's just hope that it's good. And if it's not good, let's hope that they build on the system. I think that basically guild housing and customizable housing is something really great. Not going to say it's in the worst way, but I really enjoyed Warlords of Draenor. I loved having my own stronghold and keep and going on missions and building up my place and making it my own. And I think that this could be a really good positive. You know, I think that a lot of people want that customizable space so that they can basically feel immersed in the world. We all play MMOs to enjoy the MMO, to have fun, to get good at it, and also to immerse ourselves in it. And having your own customizable space that you can make your own, not just some like, you know, set out NPC laid landscape, like when you go to a district in like Divinity's Reach or anything like that. Having your own customizable place is a massive positive, and it's what a lot of people do want. That's why games like, you know, V-Rising and Valheim and things like that do so well, because people want to build their own space. This is a huge step in the right direction, and if they can pull it off properly, this could attract a lot of players. Being able to cosmetically change your character the way you want to and create a house and an area the way you want to is a massive part of what people do want in MMOs. So I think this is a massive positive. Yeah, and that's pretty much the video. I think those are 10 things that would make Guild Wars 2 a much, much better game. Please, if I missed anything out, let me know in the comments below. Love to hear your thoughts. I feel like some people are too scared to talk about these things. They're like, you know, oh man, you're just negative, the game's brilliant, everything. I think it's good to talk about these things. I think it's good to look at the game and be like, what do I enjoy? What do I not enjoy? What do I like about other games? And just see, maybe they don't work out. Maybe we think they're going to be good, but when we get them, we're like, this is horrible. This has destroyed the game. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, all the really awesome things. Didn't enjoy it, thanks for watching anyway. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.